Good morning. Surprising as it may seem, we are having difficulty getting past a certain hump. Many of you love the Master, and I know you do. You revere his name, you cherish his words. You would not for a moment speak lightly of him. And yet, there is this strange stall in our progress, as if reverence itself has become a kind of velvet rope keeping us on the outside of the very life he came to awaken within us. Do you see that? Now let me set the guardrails at once, because this is delicate. The purpose here is not to diminish Jesus. It is to hear him. It is not to take away one jewel from his crown, but to recognize what that crown signifies. He did not come to gather admirers of his outer person. He came pointing, always pointing, to the Father, to the kingdom not over there, not at a future time, but within you. To honor him is to follow his pointing. Do you see that? Not to clutch the finger, but to look where it directs. What is this second-hand worship I am speaking of? It is very subtle, and it wears a devotional face. It is repeating words as if the words could save us. It is singing songs until the songs become a narcotic. It is defending labels and creeds and camps with great heat. It is telling stories of Jesus as if proximity to the stories were the same as contact with the living presence. And all the while, the interior contact those words were meant to lead to is postponed, postponed, postponed. We are left with echoes in the outer ear instead of the word in the inner temple. Do you see that? This is the hump. We do not intentionally choose it. We drift into it because it feels safe, respectable, shared. But safety, respectability, and crowds have never yet opened the kingdom. Frankly, I can't do it for you. Nor can the writings or the recordings do it for you. They can only remind you of what the Master insisted. Turn within. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to that which is already your life. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Not afar, not a theory, but the actual substance of you. Do you follow that? So the promise of our time together is not a doctrinal fight, not a clever rearranging of theological furniture. The promise is a return to the Master's own method, the simple, courageous refusal to live secondhand, to receive the Comforter not as an idea to admire, but as the present activity of grace in you, to embody Christ not as a badge, but as life. I am a willing instrument. I'm willing to be still and let you be God. That is the attitude. That is the move. Do you see it? If worship becomes second-hand, it can keep you from the first-hand God Jesus revealed. Let us, then, set a quiet intention as we begin. Father, take us from the outer court into the inner room. We are willing to be still. We are willing to hear. We are willing to move from admiration to realization. And we will, by grace, get past this hump. Now, because this is delicate, let us say it plainly and early so we cannot be misunderstood. This is not irreverence, and it is not anti-church as a hobby. It is a refusal to settle for substitutes. We are not here to knock stained glass or hymnody. We are here to refuse anything that becomes a veil in the very hour it was meant to be a window. Do you see that? If I say to you, turn within, I am not sending you away from Christ. I am sending you to Christ, where Christ actually is, within you as the living activity of God. This is not duality, not turning to a far-off God. It is merely a human form of turning within to where God already is. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Not in theory, in fact. Now consider the Master himself. He did not stand as a rival to the Father. He stood as the transparency for the Father. He that seeth me seeth the Father. Do you follow that? Not he that seeth me seeth a Superman, but the Father. And when he said, I can of mine own self do nothing, the Father within me, he doeth the works. He took all the medals off his own chest, so that you and I would never again worship personality and miss principle. The moment the personality is enthroned, the revelation is dethroned. And we do it with good intentions. We love the human story of Jesus, and, we forget the divine fact he embodied. I and the Father are one. Your oneness, my oneness, every individual's oneness. To honor him is to let that oneness be realized, not admired at a distance. So please, let us set a guardrail right here. We will not use Jesus to avoid the Father. We will not use church to avoid Spirit. We will not use my words or anyone's words to avoid the Word that sounds only in the inner sanctuary. Frankly, I can't do it for you, nor can a teacher, nor can an organization. A man or a woman sins when they leave you in the position of believing that you, in any wise, need them. If these talks ever made you dependent, I would want to tear them up. Why? Because the ethical aim is freedom. Freedom from dependency on teacher, church, creed, or even this speaker, so that you may stand in the realized presence of the Father within. And here is our practical test. Are we focusing on the person or on the principle that the person revealed? If the person absorbs our devotion, but the principle is not embodied, we have missed the revelation. If, however, we let the person be the open door and we go through, turning within until the Father's presence announces itself as our very life, then we have loved the Master enough to follow him. I am a willing instrument. I'm willing to be still and let you be God. That is reverence. That is the only worship that does not replace union, but completes it. Do you see that? Now let us look directly at the way the Master's words are to function. They are not ornaments for our memory. They are instruments for our realization. As long as they remain in a book, they aren't of any more value or power except as literature. When, however, we embody one of the principles, when we take it inside and let it become the state of consciousness from which we live, then we are living that scripture. Do you see that? Reading is preparatory. Realization is the power. Take the simplest, and perhaps the most misunderstood. The kingdom of God is within you. Not in a shrine, not in a hillside, not in yesterday or tomorrow. Within you. If that is true, what would be the procedure? Not outward pleading, not outward proving, but inward recognition. We do not try to drag a far-off God down into our affairs. We turn to the interior, where God already is. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to where the presence is already dwelling as your life. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Do you follow that? Now take his other word. I and the Father are one. How does that function? Not as a slogan, no. If you put it on a wall and admire it, it blesses you only as art. But if you sit quietly and let its meaning take possession of you until separation yields, until you actually feel the hush that says, nothing can come to me or depart from me, accept what comes to or departs from God. Then you have moved your center of gravity. You are no longer a lonely self seeking supply, safety, or wisdom out there. You are the transparency for the One. Do you see that? And here is the balancing word. Of mine own self I can do nothing. That is not defeatism. It is the release from personal straining. It shifts us from mental effort to spiritual receptivity. The works are not accomplished by your clever thought. The Father within doeth the works. Christ as the activity of grace moves, and you rest in consent. I am a willing instrument. I'm willing to be still and let you be God. Now the detour, because we all take it. We turn these sayings into slogans we repeat at the first sign of trouble, like magic phrases. We hope the sound of the words will change the condition. That is secondhand religion in a new suit. The words are doors you must walk through. You must stop, turn, and let the meaning become experience. So let us take our first experiment, right here. Close the book, inwardly. Be still a moment. Without reaching for a thought about God, turn to God. Let the attention sink gently from head to heart. Father, here I am. I can of mine own self do nothing. If the kingdom is within, let thy presence announce itself. And wait. No words if they do not come. No effort to make a feeling. Only a willingness to be still. Do you feel that difference? The difference between thinking about God and turning to God? If you do this for 1 minute, for 3, several times a day, the scripture ceases to be a framed sentence and becomes a living state. You will find decisions ripening from within rather than being argued from without. You will find that help comes through you, not from you. And the great simplicity stands revealed. Jesus' words are not to be admired. They are to be enacted, as an inward turn into the kingdom already present. Then the letter yields to the Spirit, and the Spirit does the works. Do you see that? Now here's where the idol comes in. And it is so polished, so respectable, so devotional, that we hardly dare call it by its name. Surprising as it may seem, you can praise Christ all day and never touch Christ as the living activity of God within your own consciousness. Do you see that? You can sing the name, frame the verse, defend the doctrine, and yet avoid the one move that the Master insisted upon, the inward yielding whereby the Father within doeth the works. It feels like devotion, it sounds like devotion, and all the while it is a postponement. That is the subtle idol, worship that replaces union. Now let me make the distinction for you, because it is the very hump upon which we keep stalling. Reverence honors. Reverence bows before the presence and says, "Holy, holy, holy is the One." Reliance, on the other hand, makes a middleman. Reliance turns the person, the book, the meeting, even the memory of yesterday's inspiration into a substitute for present realization. And so, admiring Jesus, admiring truth, admiring church, we stay on the porch. We never cross into the conscious transition where God becomes our actual being, not our theology, where I and the Father are one ceases to be a sentence and becomes the state from which we live. We remain curators of quotations instead of the transparency for the One. Do you see that? Why do we do it? Because second-hand religion is emotionally safe. If God is always up there, out there, then I need not surrender my will, my fears, my carefully guarded selfhood. I can keep control. I can keep my schedule, my anxieties, my little grudges. I can even keep my spiritual pride. I can visit sacred places and exit unchanged. I can say, Christ will handle it someday, out there, instead of yielding now so that Christ, as the activity of grace, may move through here. It is safer to admire the sun than to stand in its light. It is safer to agree that the kingdom is within than to become still long enough to let it actually govern. Do you follow that? And here is the ethical line we must draw with firmness and love. Any teaching, any teacher, any organization that leaves you believing you need them has missed the Master's purpose. A man or a woman sins when they leave you in the position of believing that you in any wise need them. Frankly, I can't do it for you, nor can the writings, nor can this gathering. If I thought these talks would bind you to me, I would want to tear them up. The only righteous fruit is your inner freedom in God. The Comforter present, not promised. The Father within, not hired out. Christ realized, not admired from afar. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to where God already is. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. So watch the substitution as it tries to creep in with holy language. The lips say Christ. The heart clings to an outer prop. The lips say Spirit. The hand reaches for a new charm, a new authority, a new system. In that instant, stop. Not to condemn yourself, that is another trap, but to see clearly. I am being tempted to trade union for homage. And then quietly, inwardly, make this willingness. I can of mine own self do nothing. I will not try to get it from the outer. Father, be the life of this very moment. Let thy grace be the sufficiency. Then wait. Even 3 breaths of honest consent begin to break the idol and restore the living Christ to his rightful place, as the activity of God within your own consciousness. Do you see that? If I go not away, the Comforter will not come unto you. There is the hinge on which our whole maturity swings. Do you see that? The Master was not being dramatic about death or departure. He was liberating his disciples from the subtle idolatry of his outer presence. As long as they could look to his voice, his hand, his decision, they could postpone the one movement he came to make inevitable, the inward reliance upon the Father within. It is not cruelty. It is love refusing to let you remain a spiritual child. If I, this form, this personality, this visible assurance, do not go away in your consciousness, you will continue to reach out, not in, and the Comforter will have no room to announce itself. Do you follow that? So, now let us bring that home. The pattern repeats itself in every age. While the student clings to the visible teacher, the invisible presence is postponed. While the congregation clings to the building, the inner temple remains unattended. While you and I cling to the image of Jesus, our favorite portrait, our favorite song, our favorite theological argument about him, the living Christ as the activity of God within stands at the door and knocks, unreceived. Not because Christ is unwilling, but because the doorway of attention is blocked by a beloved picture. This is not scolding, it is diagnosis. The teacher must go away in you, not into non-existence, but into transparency, so that the Father within may assume his own office. What does it mean for Jesus to go away today? It means that you stop using him as a substitute for your own inner listening. It means that instead of asking, "What would Jesus do?" as a mental exercise, you become still and ask, "Father, what is thy will moving here?" And then wait until the same Spirit that moved in the Master moves in you. It means letting go of the argumentative defense of his history long enough to meet his actuality, as Christ, as grace, as the doer of the works within your very consciousness. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. And then you let the works be done, not by the magic of a name on your lips, but by the living presence in your midst. Do you see that? Now, some of you with tender hearts feel a sting here, as if we are taking Jesus away. No, we are loving him enough to follow him. We are not dismissing the Master. We are consenting to his own order of succession, from person to presence, from companionship to comforter, from admiration to realization. He is not lost in this going away. He is universalized. He ceases to be the one you visit and becomes the life that visits you from within. Every hour, every need, every decision. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to where God already is. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. And let us be very practical. When the pressure mounts, money, safety, approval, notice the first reach. If you reach for an image, an argument, a group identity, you are asking the Master to be your crutch. In that instant, gently let the image recede. Master, I release the picture. I honor thy pointing. Father, be the voice, be the sufficiency, be the law unto this very circumstance. Then be still. Not a mental emptiness, but a willingness. The smallest interval of honest yielding opens the inward ear. And what comes is not your thought, it is the Comforter. Guidance as a clear yes or no. Peace as a felt authority. Provision as an unlabored flow. Help comes through, not from, the person. The Master goes away, and behold, he is nearer the nearness, as Christ activity, as grace, doing the works where no picture could. Do you see that? Now we must see how this works, not as a theory, but as a functioning life. Christ within is not a badge you wear. It is an activity moving. It is grace as motion, as law, as sufficiency, realized in consciousness and allowed to flow out as thought, as word, as deed. Do you see that? As long as Christ remains your belief about a person, there is no activity. The moment you are still and inwardly consent, Father, be the life of this moment, the activity begins. It is not your achievement. It is not your understanding. This help has to come as the activity of the Christ, not as my understanding. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Let thy grace be the sufficiency unto this individual, unto this situation, unto this very condition appearing. Do you follow that? And so our first correction is a tender but firm one. We cannot do spiritual living by mental effort. We cannot think our way into the kingdom. Affirmations without presence become metaphysical platitude cliché business. They exhaust the mind and leave the heart unwatered. The Master never told you to admire phrases. He told you to abide. Abiding is not manufacturing thoughts. It is consenting to the flow of a life that already is. One touch of the Christ is enough to raise the dead, not because the syllables are magic, but because the activity of grace is the only real doer. The Father within me, he doeth the works. Now, how do you place yourself where that activity can move? Instrument language is the only safe language here. I am a willing instrument. I'm willing to be still and let you be God. Nothing must come to me. It must come through me. Nothing must be acquired. It must be revealed. And so I sit. I turn. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to where God already is. And I wait without strain. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. The activity of Christ, then, is not coming in from elsewhere. It is the Father's own movement from the center of your being out into visibility as wisdom, as timing, as provision, as courage, as silence when silence is the law, as speech when speech is the law. Do you see that? Bring worship back into its rightful place. Worship is holy when it bows you into stillness. Worship is unholy when it replaces stillness. The hymn that softens your will into consent is sacred. The hymn that becomes a substitute for consent is a veil. The prayer that yields, "Father, thy grace is sufficient," opens the door. The prayer that tries to make God do something closes it. You can feel the difference. One leaves you quiet and watchful, expecting nothing and receiving everything. The other leaves you excited, anxious, still bargaining with appearances. So let us make the inner move practical. When the need presents itself, money, safety, approval, whatever form, do not reach for the lever of thought. Do not tighten the lips around your favorite verse. Pause. Turn. Father, I can of mine own self do nothing. Be the law, be the life, be the wisdom here. Let thy grace be the sufficiency. And then wait. Not long, sometimes a breath or two, until the subtle shift comes. A loosening, a hush, a tiny yes or no, a lifting of compulsion. That is the Christ activity announcing itself. Follow that. Trust that. Let it move you. Help comes through, not from the person. And the more you live as instrument, the more the Master's promise ceases to be literature and becomes your very way of life. Do you see that? Now let us come to the point where all of this must function. Because theory is cheap and appearances are noisy. Suppose I present to you on a blackboard the statement, 2 times 2 is 5. Where are you going to meet it? You are not going to grab the chalk and wrestle with it. You are not going to slap the hand that wrote it. You are going to meet it within your own understanding. Quietly, effortlessly, you let the realized truth, 2 times 2 is 4, displace the suggestion. And in that light, the error has no power. Do you see that? In the same way, when sickness, shortage, conflict, shame, unworthiness, addiction to approval, even religious anxiety present themselves, you do not battle a body, a person, a bank book, a church. You meet a belief, a claim, a suggestion, an appearance within your own consciousness. Where can you meet a belief, except in your own mind? Not in a scalpel, and not in an argument. The moment you try to meet it in a person, in a body, in a relationship, you are in competition with all the methods that properly deal with persons and bodies and relationships. And we are not in competition. We are removed from competition because we are not trying to fix an outer condition. We are correcting the acceptance of an appearance as law. Do you follow that? Fear says, you are separate, therefore unsafe. Shame says, you are separate, therefore unworthy. Religious anxiety says, you are separate, therefore not yet acceptable to God. All are the same lie with different costumes. 2 times 2 is 5. Now see how secondhand worship often sneaks in right here as a sedative. We feel the pinch of anxiety and we sing louder. We feel the sting of unworthiness and we recite verses faster. We feel the ache of approval addiction and we join another committee. It manages the nerves for an hour, but the belief of separation remains unchallenged, and tomorrow the same arithmetic is waiting on the board. We are not here to do narcotics with holy words. We are here to let grace dissolve the premise of separation so thoroughly that the appearance has nothing to stand on. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to where God already is. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Therefore, the procedure is always inward first. Father, this fear, this symptom, this craving is tempting me to agree that 2 times 2 is 5. Of mine own self I can do nothing. Let thy grace be the sufficiency. Reveal thyself as the only law, the only life, the only identity here. And then wait, still, willing. The hush comes. The authority of peace announces itself. Sometimes a clear impulse of what to do next appears. If a doctor, a counselor, a conversation is the next right step, it will be given without fear and without superstition, because you are not competing with anything. You are abiding in the one while following the wisdom that flows. Help comes through, not from the person. Do you see that? Bring it back to the Master. He did not argue with appearances. He did not shout at leprosy or politicize storms. He stood in realized union. I and the Father are one. The Father within me, he doeth the works. And the appearance yielded. Peace, be still, is not magic against weather. It is truth addressing a suggestion from the altitude of oneness. She is not dead but sleepeth is not sentiment. It is refusal to grant finality to an appearance. And so with us. We do not fix outer conditions by worship. We meet the belief in separation within consciousness until grace reveals what is true. I am a willing instrument. I'm willing to be still and let you be God. 2 times 2 is 4. Christ as the activity of grace is the law of being here, and in that light the chalk marks of fear and shame have no authority. Do you see that? Now we bring it home to where the arithmetic is written in big red chalk. The day you check the bank account and it growls at you. The hour the diagnosis is handed to you. The moment a loved one's face hardens or the boss's email stings. Right there we discover whether we live union or only recite it. Your real theology is revealed under pressure. Do you see that? Pressure is not your enemy. It is your proving ground. It forces the question, will I reach out for a Savior in the marketplace, or will I turn into the Savior already present as the Father within? 2 reflexes stand before you. The first is the outward scramble. Who can lend me, fix me, defend me, approve me? The second is the inward listening. Father, is this for us right now? The first multiplies motion and deepens fear. The second produces a hush and makes room for the Comforter. Now, do not caricature this. Turning within is not passivity. It is procedure. It is the only procedure the Master authorized. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me, he doeth the works. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to where God already is. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. So here is the inner script you must practice until it is more natural than panic. Stop, physically if you can, inwardly if you cannot. Turn, draw the attention from the scene to the secret place. Ask, Father, what is thy will moving here? Is this for us right now? Wait, not long, not grimly. Quiet, consenting. Then let the impulse be what it is, yes or no. Speak or be silent. Act or be still. No hysteria, no bargaining, no manipulating the answer with your fear. And when action is indicated, a call, a doctor, a payment plan, an apology, you go, but you go as instrument. Help comes through, not from, the person. Do you follow that? We must disarm the magical interpretation right here, because it is the old idol in a new robe. This is not licensed to be irresponsible, not a certificate that says, charge it, God pays. It is not a claim on riches. It is the discovery of guidance and sufficiency from within. Sometimes the inward yes opens a door you had not seen. Sometimes the inward no closes an alluring trap. Sometimes the inward hush holds you in peace while provision ripens invisibly. Then suddenly, naturally, the needed form appears. Not laws of chance, not laws of fear, not laws of other people's moods, only the one law of grace operating from within to without. Now, repetition is not failure. Repetition is formation. The battle must be fought again and again until the new consciousness becomes the reflex. Today with money, tomorrow with safety, next week with approval. Again and again the old reach will twitch, and again you will stop, turn, ask, wait. Father, I can of mine own self do nothing. Be the law here. Let thy grace be the sufficiency. And as you persist, the pressure that once exposed your slavery will begin to reveal your freedom. Under the same conditions that used to unmake you, you will feel the unhurried government of the kingdom within. Do you see that? Now the Master takes us one step further, and he does it with a sentence that dismantles centuries of habit without a shout. The hour cometh, and now is, when ye shall neither in this mountain, nor yet at Jerusalem, worship the Father, but in spirit and in truth. Do you see that? Place is not the source. System is not the source. They may assist. They must never substitute. The building can be a shelter from rain and noise. The liturgy can quiet the mind. The hymn can soften the will. But the presence is not in the brick, not in the calendar, not in the robe. The presence is the Father within, the kingdom within, realized and allowed. Worship, then, is not a location. It is a realization. Do you follow that? And here is the ethical danger that must be named tenderly and firmly. Institutions, by their very construction, lean towards self-preservation, and self-preservation is often disguised as your dependence. Dependency feels like loyalty, but it is bondage. A man or a woman sins when they leave you in the position of believing that you in any wise need them. A teacher fails if you leave believing that without them you cannot find God. The Master frees you. If I go not away, the Comforter will not come unto you. If I, as teacher or organization or tradition, do not go away in your consciousness as the supposed source, you will not discover the actual source. Do you see that? Now, this is not contempt for community. It is not an insult to tradition. It is the restoration of function. Community becomes fellowship when it bows to the inner one. It is idolatry when it replaces him. Tradition becomes a lamp when it illumines the path. It is a prison when it blocks the sky. So do not throw stones at churches, and do not enthrone them. Sit among friends, sing if you like, read if you are helped, but let the moment of worship be the moment you turn inwardly and consent to the living God. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to where God already is. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. Tell me, what do you need a membership in anything for except as a convenience for loving one another and serving the world? What do you need a tithe for except as a free overflow of gratitude? The instant it becomes an admission ticket to God, it is bondage. The instant any outer requirement takes the place of inner realization, the altar has been moved out of you, and you are left with a lovely room and an absent fire. Bring the altar home. The inner temple is open, at the kitchen sink, in traffic, in grief, in the hospital corridor, in the airport line, at the graveside. The place whereon I stand is holy ground. Not because of carpet or candles, but because the One stands here as your very life. So you stop, turn, ask, wait, right there. With your hands wet from dishes, with the horn blaring behind you, with the ache rising in your chest, and you let the Comforter be the priest and the service. Father, I can of mine own self do nothing. Let thy grace be the sufficiency. In that instant, worship becomes spirit and truth. No mountain, no Jerusalem, only the living God realized where you are, as you are, through you. And when we meet again in any room, let it be 2 or 3 gathered in that name, not a title on a door, but the realized presence within. Do you see that? Now, since the altar is home, we must give you a simple service to keep. Not an hour, not a siege, not a struggle. 3 to 5 minutes, several times a day. No problem solving, no mental wrestling, only the inward turn. Do you see that? We break the habit of secondhand worship by practicing first-hand presence. Brief, real, repeated. And the grace that has been literature becomes law in your very being. First, recognition. Sit or stand where you are. Close your eyes if you can, but it is not required. Turn attention from the scene to the secret place, and quietly acknowledge, not loudly, not to persuade, but to recognize what is. God is individual being. God is my being. God is your being. The kingdom is within. The place whereon I stand is holy ground, because the One stands here as my life. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to where God already is. Say it inwardly, not as a chant of magic, but as recognition, like recognizing daylight when you open the shade. Do you follow that? Second, surrender. When recognition has softened the will, whisper within yourself, I of mine own self can do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Let thy grace be the sufficiency here, and let the words be permission, not performance. Let them be your consent to be an instrument. I am a willing instrument. I'm willing to be still and let you be God. Not forcing silence, not making results, consenting. Do you see that? Third, allowing. Rest a minute or two in the hush that follows, not timing the clock, but abiding in willingness. Do not demand a sensation, and do not doubt if one does not come. Often there is a felt shift, peace like weight settling, warmth as if a gentle hand is upon you, a clarity that unties a knot, a release where you were clenched. Sometimes it is only quiet authority, unspectacular and sure. Whatever it is, or if it is nothing you can name, receive it without commentary. Thy grace is sufficient. The greatest achievements have come when there have been no words and no thoughts. Do you follow that? Fourth, return. Open your eyes if they were closed. Go on with your day, but go on from the inner contact instead of the anxious self. Speak kindly, answer the email, make the call, pay the bill, keep the appointment, normally, responsibly, but now as instrument. Nothing must come to me, it must come through me. And as you move, keep a small inward listening, a readiness to pause again for 30 seconds, a minute. Several times a day, repeat this: recognition, surrender, allowing, return. Not to get something, but to live from what already is. This practice is the end of secondhand religion, because it trains you to stop at the door of outer dependence and enter the sanctuary of realized presence. 3 minutes of stillness becomes a seed. Repeated, it becomes a tree under which your whole day rests. Money, safety, approval. The same procedure, the same inner law. God is individual being. God is my being. I of mine own self can do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Let thy grace be the sufficiency. And then live, gently governed from within. Do you see that? Now let us tie the knot where many hearts have felt torn. You do not have to choose between reverence for Jesus and inner realization. Reverence, when it is true, matures into obedience to his pointing, away from clinging to his outer form and into the living kingdom he revealed within you. To love the Master is to trust his wisdom about how you will meet God, not in adoration at a distance, but in union at the center. Do you see that? He is not diminished by this, he is fulfilled in it. He ceases to be a picture you defend and becomes the very life that governs you. This is not duality. This is merely a human form of turning within to where God already is. We have moved together, step by step, from praising a figure to embodying a principle, to living as an instrument of Christ's activity. From what would Jesus do as a thought, to Father, what is thy will moving here as a living contact? From reciting about grace to pausing until grace announces itself as peace, as guidance, as sufficiency. Help comes through, not from the person. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. The Master's going away in your consciousness is not absence. It is the Comforter's presence taking its rightful office in you. Do you follow that? So here is the question that will keep you honest when the old reach twitches. When you say Lord, are you reaching outward or awakening inward? Do you see that? If it is outward, pause, tenderly, without scolding, and let the picture recede. If it is inward, abide in the hush a breath longer, and let the law of grace bear witness to itself. Outward reach keeps you a spectator. Inward awakening makes you a participant in the very life you adore. Now be reassured. The simplicity is the proof. The kingdom does not require cleverness, only receptivity. Children grasp it because they do not insist on being the doer. 3 minutes, several times a day. Recognition, surrender, allowing, return. and you discover that obedience is not labor. It is rest that moves. I am a willing instrument. I'm willing to be still and let you be God. Not dramatic, not noisy, quiet, sure, sufficient. The greatest achievements have come when there have been no words and no thoughts. Thy grace is sufficient. And as we part, let us keep the conversation that matters, not the doctrinal quarrels that drain the heart. Share where secondhand religion has replaced first-hand presence in you. Money, safety, approval, even pious habit. And what happens when you turn within instead? Not to argue, but to bear witness to the Comforter's faithfulness. Neither in this mountain, nor yet in Jerusalem. Not in debate, not in display, but in spirit and in truth. In the inner temple that is open wherever you stand. The highest honor you can give Jesus is to stop substituting worship for union and live the inward kingdom he revealed. Let the reverence become realization. Let the love become consent. Let the name upon your lips become the life within your being. God is individual being. God is your being. God is my being. I can of mine own self do nothing. Father, thou doest the works. Let thy grace be the sufficiency here. And as you go, go as instrument, quiet, available, governed from within. Do you see that?